How's it going, everyone? Today I'm joined by Brendan Gulick, publisher of Browns Digest, which is part of the Fan Nation Network, which I work for as well. Today we're going to be asking each other 5 questions about the other person's team, although that's not your team, it's the team you cover. Brendan, thank you so much for
Are
joining
the
me.
49ers your team? I mean, is this, do
Not,
you have an ownership stake?
no, they didn't ask me. I just do quality control pro bono.
Interesting.
Anyway,
Good way to think about it. Am I in the cone zone? Is that how this works?
You are absolutely officially in the cone zone. How does it feel?
All right. Pretty good. Yeah, feel pretty good. Haven't gotten into these hard-hitting questions yet, so we'll see how this goes.
All right, I'll ask you first, and then you can ask me about the 49ers.
Right.
What will the Browns offense look like with PJ Walker at quarterback, and what are his strengths and weaknesses?
I'm only being somewhat sarcastic when I say he can yell hike. Yeah, no, look, I think he's got some strengths. But I'll tell you right now, Browns fans aren't feeling pretty good going into this weekend. It's the 10th time since 1999 that we've had to start at least 3 quarterbacks in a season. You know, here we are 5 games into the year and it's already the 3rd quarterback we've started. And so there is an element of this. It's like, really? Are we really doing this again? Now, it's the NFL. Any team can win, right? There is parity in this league, and the Browns defense is for real. And I know we're going to talk about that. So I'm not saying by any stretch that this is like, don't even bother watching the game, Browns fans. Your specific question about PJ Walker, quick release. He's got a fairly strong arm. He is reasonably mobile, and I would say he can probably lean on the fact that he's played a lot of football. He's got some experience. I don't know if I would go too much deeper, though, in terms of strengths. And unfortunately, there are a bunch of weaknesses. He's kind of scattershot in terms of accuracy. His preseason completion percentage is 47.8. That ain't good enough. He's obviously not that big, and I think there's a number of instances where you can see on film that things are getting quick for him. He kind of accelerates his way through plays too quickly. He doesn't seem to have the right eye level against pressure, and I'm sure the 49ers are looking at this saying, we got a guy that's going to go play quarterback that doesn't have a whole lot underneath him. Like, let's get after him and see what we can make happen. So I am hopeful that Kevin Stefanski is going to call plays to put him in a good position and try to get the ball out of his hand quickly.
Why PJ Walker instead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Was DTR just that bad?
It was a bad week last week.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess I'll put it to you this way. DTR looks like he could be a really good player. And I know the Browns are very high on him. First of all, this is Deshaun Watson's team, right? I mean, it's just that simple. But as a backup quarterback, you have to know you're always one snap away. And I don't know if it's just the way people ran with the comments this week, but DTR said that he didn't even know he was starting last week till 10:30 in the morning on Sunday. And it gave the impression, when you consider that and you consider the performance, that he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just a youth thing. And when I say last week, I mean 2 weeks ago. The Browns were on a bye. But, I think it's one of those situations where you threw the kid in too fast. So I don't think it's a condemnation of his ability as much as he just didn't play very well.
Okay. Let me ask you about this. I could just go here. Let me do 5 and then you do 5 so we can keep it tidy. So, all right. Because I want to keep you on the spot right now. You're doing good. What's this run game like without
the cone zone light in front of me is getting really hot?
That's right. What is the run game like without Nick Chubb?
I'm sorry. Did you say run game without Nick Chubb?
Does it exist? Does it exist? No.
I mean, if we're being honest, like, it's okay. I'm having a little fun with you. When you have a Ferrari and your Ferrari needs, a repair, and you rent a Kia Sportage, there's a difference. And, like, I'm not trying to dog on Jerome Ford. He's fine, but he's not Nick Chubb. And nobody in that running back room is Nick Chubb, and there is no replacing a guy that's that good.
Yeah.
You could argue that he is one of the best running backs in the history of the franchise, and maybe the stats will back that up by the time his career is over. Obviously, Jim Brown is a legend here, but
Yeah.
you're kind of talking about Nick Chubb being mentioned in that same breath in terms of his ability. So, yeah, there's a lot of question marks right now about the Browns offense, because if you don't have a run game, you put more pressure on your quarterback. And right now, you don't have your starting quarterback. And on top of all of that, the Browns haven't said this, but it is questionable that Joel Bitonio, who is probably your best offensive lineman, in my opinion, and David Njoku, who is certainly one of your best offensive weapons at tight end, it is questionable that they're both going to play this weekend. So, do the Browns feel fired up? I mean, maybe internally they can get it going. I hope they can. I want them to play well. Fans are looking at this going, no Deshaun Watson, no Nick Chubb, potentially no Njoku, and no Bitonio against the 49ers. Is the weather going to be okay?
Win for Cleveland.
Yeah, can we go play golf and then watch the
Yeah.
game afterward? But that's what, again, like, it's the NFL, right? So you just never know. Like, yeah, sure, that makes all the sense in the world. Browns by 20. I don't know. I mean, it's a weird league.
Okay. Let's talk about the reason the Browns have a shot. Their defense. It's really good. That being said, Dallas had a really good defense, and they just gave up 42 to the 49ers. So tell me why the Browns will do better if you think they will.
I certainly think they'll do better. The Browns defense isn't really good. It's elite. It is outstanding. And for that reason alone, they will be in every game they play this year. I know the score didn't look great against Baltimore. That defense is the real deal. And to me, it starts up front. Last year, the Browns defensive tackles were atrocious, and they made substantial strides in the defensive line. Zadarius Smith in particular, I think, has been a real addition. Essentially, you needed to see a philosophical change, and frankly, I think some personnel change. And the combination of the two with Jim Schwartz in here now has been awesome. I do think the Browns will play better defensively against San Francisco than Dallas did last week, if nothing else, because the wide 9 front is going to slow down any edge rushing attack. The defensive highlights of the year, in my opinion, have been Myles Garrett first and foremost. And one of the funniest things I've ever seen is Myles Garrett starting lined up at the right side of the line and pre-snap moving to the left side of the line, and 2 tight ends motioning to follow him. And then Garrett comes back, and before those tight ends even got set, they flank back to block him again. I mean, how many guys command that kind of attention? Or the one where Myles is standing over the center and he's crossing over like he's pretending to dribble a basketball, and then did a crossover move. It was like he told him told the offensive lineman what he was going to do, and it still didn't stop him. Look, ultimately, I think the Browns defensive line, their width physically on the field, but also their depth on the roster, and their strength and power will neutralize a good bit of what San Francisco can do. I don't expect this to be a game where there are a boatload of explosive plays that the Browns give up. They've had pretty good linebacker play, and their secondary has been much better this year. So, I mean, look, San Francisco is elite. And watching that team cook a couple weeks here, it's obvious to me they're a legit Super Bowl contender. And the Browns defense is going to have to play an outstanding game, but they're very capable of doing it.
You mentioned Jim Schwartz. He's had tremendous success against Kyle Shanahan in his career. It's his first season with the Browns as their defensive coordinator. He's running the wide 9 like he always has. And I mean, Kyle Shanahan has had such a tough time against Jim Schwartz that he adopted the wide 9. The Niners run the wide 9 because of Jim Schwartz, essentially. So what has he done for this defense?
It's first of all, it's one of those weird things that you see a guy seemingly have somebody's number. Doesn't matter where he's been or what personnel he's had. Jim Schwartz has had it figured out against Kyle. And so Browns fans are like, hey, we got a shot. Bring CMC to town. Sure, we can do that.
Yeah.
Look, I I think Jim Schwartz has given this defense, um, for lack of a better way to say it, like some simplicity. It's as if he took largely the same group and said, okay, we're going to dumb down the scheme a little bit. Maybe this was a bit too complicated. We're going to adopt a few new things, including the wide nine, and go play and go be aggressive and get after the quarterback. And the fact that we've shored up the defensive line away from Myles Garrett, I think, has substantially helped. Um, the reality is we've played 3 divisional games, and so in the AFC North, you always feel like, hey, man, you're going to play tough teams in the division. Um, Pittsburgh is not anywhere close to what they usually are, and that one the Browns kind of choked away. The Baltimore game was a bit of a clunker for sure, and Joe Burrow still can't seem to beat the Browns, although this year maybe catching him at a time where he was unhealthy was part of that equation. Certainly wasn't last year. I guess I'm pointing this out to say, like, is it possible that the sample size for the Browns maybe isn't quite large enough yet? I suppose it's possible. But there are a lot of people here believing that Jim Schwartz has brought some different level of accountability and credibility to a defense that clearly had talent, right? I mean, it's not like Denzel Ward, couldn't play football under Joe Woods. It became obvious that Joe Woods' scheme was just not working and too complicated. And we've heard from players along the way that the simplicity of it has allowed them the freedom to go play.
Okay, final question. This elite Browns defense, what's the weakest link? Because that's where the Niners are going.
Yeah. I would imagine that they're probably going to go to the air. I don't think San Francisco's coming into this game saying, we're going to run the ball all over them. I mean, maybe they do. I have a hard time seeing that be the case. I mean, if we're talking like strictly what we've seen so far this year, there really hasn't been a glaring weakness. There are some metrics right now that say the Browns have had the best defense in the NFL. I don't know that I totally buy that, but through their, first month and a half of the season, there is some data that says that's the case. I'm not 100% sold on the secondary. They've been way better this year than they were last year. I think they still need to take some steps forward. But I mean, San Francisco's got so many weapons, man. And so I don't know. I look at Kyle Shanahan. I think he's one of the better offensive minds in the game. And I know Jim Schwartz has had his number, but my guess is that he's going to scheme some things up that are going to work well. I don't know that I would pick on Denzel Ward, but the opposite side of the field I would throw to. Grant Delpit's been a lot better this year at safety. He was on a lot of people's short list last year. I'll put it to you that way. And he's been substantially better, which is great. I sincerely hope that he can kind of keep that going, but I think it might behoove Kyle to try to pick on him a little bit. And look, there is an element of when you come to Cleveland, if you can run the football well and establish that, you're going to put this defense on its heels. So I think the best player on the field is probably Christian McCaffrey. I'd try to find ways to be creative and get him the ball in space.